Defense in the NBA is cooked, bro. I just watched the Indiana Pacers beat the Atlanta Hawks 157-152 in regulation time. 4 quarters. Only 4 quarters, no overtime. There was an overtime game between the Sixers and the Cavs that happened after this game, which we will discuss in a sec, and that game didn't even come close. Obviously, the defense in the NBA is not actually cooked, but the Pacers play no defense, and the Hawks play no defense. Now, for some context, the Indiana Pacers are the second worst team in the NBA when it comes to defensive rating. They are averaging 120.2 points scored against them every single game. The Atlanta Hawks are not far behind. They are 24th with 117.6 points scored against them per game. Now, we all know the rule changes the NBA has made has favored offense, and teams are scoring more than ever. Everyone knows that. Last year was the worst defensive rating of all time, the San Antonio Spurs, with 120 exactly defensive rating. This year, we have 5 teams that are worse than that. Now, it can get better. It could get worse. We have no idea. But as of right now, 5 teams in the NBA right now would statistically have the worst defensive rating of all time if the season ended today. These teams are the Charlotte Hornets, the Utah Jazz, the Indiana Pacers, the San Antonio Spurs, and the Washington Wizards. Now, the outlier of that stat is obviously the Indiana Pacers, because the Pacers are a very good team. They just don't play any defense. The Jazz, the Hornets, the Spurs, and the Wizards are all bottom 3 in their conference right now. Actually, fact check, the Jazz are the 4th worst team in the Western Conference. I was wrong. But in all fairness, the Jazz are losing to the Lakers at halftime right now by 21, so it might not be very long till they're bottom 3. Anyway, the Pacers are the first team to clinch a tournament knockout round spot, which is very, very impressive for a team that plays no defense. They allowed 152 points tonight, and they won. Like, that's just ridiculous. Trae Young had 38. DeJounte Murray had 28. Bogdan Bogdanovic had 26. Jalen Johnson had 17. Clint Capella had 14. Like, there were 6 players in double figures tonight, and 3 of those, half of those players had more than 25 points, and they lost. This mostly came down to the fact that Tyrese Halliburton had 37 points and 16 assists, which is just a ridiculous stat line. For some reason, this deleted whenever I was recording, but Tyrese Halliburton had 27 points off of three-pointers tonight. He was 9 for 15 from the three-point line. But even more crazy is Buddy Hield had 24 points, 9 for 11 from the field, which is insane, but 6 for 6 from 3 tonight. 6 for 6. The one night I don't bet Buddy Hield over on his three-pointers. The only better three-point shooting night that's happened so far this season is when Isaiah Joe went 7 for 8 from three-point land, and that 8 three-pointer, he got fouled on and shot 3 free throws. Both teams tonight shot above 60% from the field. The Hawks shot 48% from 3, and the Pacers shot 49% from 3. The only game in recent memory that I can remember being this high scoring of a game was that Sacramento Kings LA Clippers double overtime game where it had a total of like 340 points, but that was double overtime. This game had 309 points, which is essentially just 30 points shy of a double overtime game that was considered an offensive masterclass. So what does that make this game? In 4 quarters, there was 309 points scored in a basketball game. The highest scoring NBA basketball game was in 1983 when the Pistons beat the Nuggets 186-184, which is just an insane stat line for 1983 in general, but that was triple overtime. And even if it was triple overtime, like in 1983, that is completely unheard of. It's a statistical anomaly. Nowadays, you hear that score and you're like, wow, that's a lot of points. It must have been double overtime. You know what I mean? Like, that's not inconceivable anymore. Obviously, it's not, because 157-152 was just an NBA game played in a in-season tournament game, which is supposed to be more competitive. There's supposed to be more defense, harder playing games. Your star players are supposed to play upwards of 35 plus minutes. Like, this matters. And it matters to the Pacers, obviously, because they haven't gotten a taste of the NBA playoffs. Like, most of their roster is young, and Tyrese Halliburton has gone on the record saying that this matters to them. The in-season tournament matters to the Pacers, and that's obvious because they're 8-5 now, and they're the first team to clinch a spot in the in-season tournament knockout round. Now, obviously, last year I didn't know, and we didn't know, everyone didn't know, that the in-season tournament was going to be a thing. We heard the idea tossed around, but we didn't think it was actually going to be a thing. But if you would have told me last year that in a, like a little group division standings of the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Philadelphia 76ers, the Atlanta Hawks, the Detroit Pistons, and the Indiana Pacers would be the team to get out of that division, I would say you're probably crazy. That just shows how much better this Indiana Pacers team is compared to last year's Pacers team. Now, do I think they'll end up, being as good as they've been to start the season? My gut feeling tells me no, because of their defensive rating is just so atrocious that it's almost impossible to keep up this level of scoring, to keep winning basketball games in this way. But we're 13 games into the season and they're 8-5. That's not a lot into the season. I usually withhold judgment until 15 to 20 games, but 13 games in and you're 8-5, and yeah, your defense is terrible, but you're winning basketball games, I get that they haven't had the hardest matchups in the world, but they've been winning basketball games against good teams. They've beaten the Cleveland Cavaliers twice. And, the Cleveland Cavaliers are struggling to start the season, but they're no slouch of a team. They did lose to Boston by 41 points. That did happen. But they beat Milwaukee, who, yes, is struggling right now and also doesn't play any defense. But they also split games with the Sixers. So this means that they're not getting destroyed by the top 3 or 4 teams consistently. Now, that Boston game was really bad, very, very bad. Getting 155 points hung on your head while you only score 104 when you're supposed to be the best offense in the NBA is a little tough, but I think this win over the Hawks, a comeback win, mind you, the Hawks were winning the majority of this game, a comeback win against the Atlanta Hawks in the in-season tournament is a sign of good things happening in Indiana. And the fact that I'm talking about the Indiana Pacers at all this season pretty much tells you everything you need to know, because I don't upload videos consistently at all, and I'm taking time in my 9 to 12 minute video to talk about the Pacers. I mean, they're just a very fun team to watch play basketball, and a lot of people are talking about how they remind them of the 7 seconds or less Phoenix Suns in 2006, and I can kind of get it. The Pacers are the second most frequent team to shoot a shot between 22 seconds and 18 seconds on the shot clock. The number 1 team, the Atlanta Hawks. I know that's a very, very specific statistic, but the Indiana Pacers are averaging 15%, roughly 15% of their possessions ending in a shot before 17 seconds strikes the shot clock. Now let's finally talk about that Cavs-Sixers game that was decided by a missed Maxey layup in overtime. This game was just all over the place. The Cavs led for most of this game, and by led, I mean they were up 12 at halftime. And they were up 9 going into the fourth quarter. But the Sixers brought it all the way back to a Pat Bev offensive rebound that it turned into a Pat Bev floater, which was his only points of the night, to put them up 110-108. And then fouled Garland on the other end, so it ended up not mattering. It was tied 110-110. And then Embiid ISO'd on the last possession against Tristan Thompson, of all people, and it worked. It worked. Embiid took a bad step back mid-range, which he's knocked down many a time in his career, but he missed this one pretty badly. Then in overtime, you could kind of feel the fatigue kick in, mostly for Embiid for one, but also for Darius Garland. He missed 2 floaters that are usually just his bread and butter, both short. But about 2 minutes left in overtime, the Cavs put in Craig Porter Jr., who had a huge cut and drive to put the Cavs up 2, but then Tobias Harris hit a 3 in the corner to go up 1. But then Craig Porter Jr. found Jared Allen on a nice little hook shot on the other end, and then they went up 1. Timeout Sixers, side out of bounds play, ball out to Embiid, maybe just between the logo and the 3-point line. He finds a nice little cut pass to Maxey. Maxey drives to the lane, pretty much a free layup for Tyrese Maxey. He leaves it short. Embiid probably does a little bit of goaltending, and then it reflects back out to Nicholas Batum, who just bats the ball out of bounds. I guess he assumed that someone was behind him and that he was going to tip it to them, but he probably should have just grabbed it. That poor man will never beat the fourth quarter why the f*** Batuman allegations. So then the Cavs get the ball on the sideline. They inbound it to Darius Garland. He gets double-teamed by Embiid and Pat Bev in the corner of the half court. He falls forward because Pat Bev kind of runs into him, and the foul is called on Embiid, and that's Embiid's 6th foul. He fouled out. it was not on him. The ref that was there was very adamant that it was Embiid, but it was definitely on Patrick Beverley. So I'm trying to remember. Garland makes both free throws. Maxey comes down the floor, airballs a three. It goes off Dean Wade on the baseline. Batum tries to inbound the ball after a Sixers timeout. Maxey cuts to the corner, then fades out, but Batum thinks he's cutting to the corner completely. He just throws the ball away to whoever Cavs player is standing right there, and that's the game. You could make the argument, if you're a Philly fan, that if that foul is on Patrick Beverley and not Embiid, you are scoring on that possession with Tyrese Maxey and an Embiid pick and roll. I assume that's what they would have gone to if there was 9.5 seconds left and they weren't calling a timeout. But, that's how the cookie crumbles sometimes, and the Sixers were losing the whole game, so I don't want to say no one deserves to win a basketball game, but the Cavs were in the driver's seat for the majority of this game. And it's a great win for the Cavs without Donovan Mitchell. Without Donovan Mitchell, the Cavaliers beat the Sixers. Without Isaac Okoro either, Ty Jerome was also out with, I think, an ankle injury. And Karis LeVert was questionable before the game and also ended up not playing. So Garland had 32 points, Strus had 20, Jared Allen had 26, Mobley had 18. It was just a great collective effort to get a very difficult in-season tournament win over a Philly team that has been rolling. And the Cavs, in the last two games, have looked great. They beat Denver by 12. They beat the Sixers now in overtime. And both of those games were without Donovan Mitchell. And they beat the Pistons by 8, also without Donovan Mitchell. But that's also not impressive at all. I'm just happy to see the Cavs getting their shit together. It's very confidence-inducing for the rest of the season that they have these moments where they are a top 5 team in the league. When they beat the Nuggets without Donovan Mitchell, that is very, very impressive. Now, I understand the Nuggets didn't have Jamal Murray, but still. Now, outside of Kelly Oubre, who literally got hit by a car, the Sixers had all their players tonight, and the Cavs, without their best player, went into Philly and won a in-season tournament game. That is very impressive. If I was a Cavs fan, that is the type of win you want to see. Now, that's pretty much all I got. The Suns beat the Blazers tonight by 13. They're supposed to do that. The Lakers are beating the Jazz tonight by 25. They're supposed to do that. Both these teams need to pick up wins when they can get them, and if they're going to beat these lesser teams by this amount of points, that's a good sign for things to come, because they've struggled to start the season. Kevin Durant hasn't struggled, but the Phoenix Suns themselves, for the expectations they've set up with that big three, Booker, Beal, Durant, for them to have only played 2 games together, I think it might only be 1, but I think it's 2 games together. That's pretty disappointing, but if they keep getting wins, it's not. So yeah, anyway, y'all take care. Have a good one. Usually I have a funny clip or something, or a witty line for this end card, but I got nothing, because it's final season and I'm suffering. So yeah, y'all have a great Thanksgiving.